Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to show you my shop on wheels. But first, we've got to finish welding these 6-inch welds. We got 3 here and 3 there. Those over there are welded. This 6-inch pipe is drove down into the ground about 7 or 8 foot to keep this thing from blowing over. But we got to cap these with 532 8010, and then we've got to make a deal for this ladder right here, a safety deal. Keep people from climbing on it. We're going to put a little solid door with the sheet metal. That's what we're going to do today. Also, I hope you're ready to learn some information about pipeline welding. There was a couple of things that I ran into while welding this 6-inch pipe that I actually learned whenever I was pipeline welding, and I wanted to take the opportunity and share that information with you. One of those being pressure buildup inside the pipe and what to do about it. So grab you a cup of coffee, kick back, get ready to learn, and enjoy the video. So let's go ahead and here's another thing I wanted to show y'all. Check this out. This is a pigtail for my remote. So my remote box plugs into this plug, and it's got outlets on it so I can run a grinder off it. But if I don't want to plug my remote in and I'm just running a grinder, then I can plug this adapter in and just run my grinder off of it. Oh my gosh. Oh my Lanta. Alrighty, tighty, patty, come on, boy. Let it do, let it do, let it do. This here is called a grasshopper. We use them on pipeline, and this is the mini that we carry in the arosswelding store. I'll put a link in the description below. And if you've been following, you've probably noticed that I changed to regular ground in previous videos, but I went ahead and put a T300 back on here. The Stinger's just T300. We use it on pipeline work quite a bit. And that's what this grasshopper is made for. That's why it's got this little slot in it, like so. So yeah, like I said, this it's grasshopper. It's designed to weld on pipe, like up here. These pieces here are insulated so it doesn't arc on the pipe. And it's pointed so you can set it on your weld or in the bevel. The whole idea is to not arc outside the weld zone, so that's the whole purpose of a grasshopper. But I actually could set that up there. Looky there, boys. I might just do that. You bet. Because I'm gonna have to weld down there on them plates. I just got them stitch welded for now, but I got to put a seam weld here, cap this end. All this down here I'll do with 7018, but on these welds over yonder I'll use 8010 downhill rod. All right, let's fire this thing up. Last minute change. I've decided I'm gonna go ahead and use my remote. That way I don't have to walk back to the truck whenever I need to change my heat. Okay, so let's brush this thing off. Put her on about 50 to start out. Gotta put us some filler in this one and this side, and then we'll be ready to cap. I'm using a 1/8 6010 to run me a quote-unquote hot pass, aka filler. while I'm making this weld, I wanted to visit with you about these new Kevlar stitching Knox welding shirts. If you've been following, you know that I've been trying out these Knox FR welding shirts. I like them so far. I haven't done a whole bunch of downhill welding in them like I'm doing in this video, but for being an FR, they hold up good compared to some cheaper FRs. And like I've mentioned previously, I love the paisley pattern on the white ones they have. And to save you some money, if you want to try them out, you can go to their website, knoxfr.com. And if it's your first time ordering, you can punch in the discount code AustinRoss, all caps, for 15% off of your very first order. And any order after that, you can punch in the discount code AROSS, all capital letters on that one also. And please let me know what you think about the welding shirt after you've wore it out, per se. I'm genuinely curious about how you like the shirt. Here at arosswelding, we love feedback, we love quality products, and the best way to find quality products is to get feedback from the consumers. So please let me know if you try one and you wear it out. Let me know how you liked it. You can send me that information by texting it to 405-643-7176, or you can email me at arosswelding@gmail.com. So one thing that I learned last week from an instructor named Justin at the 798 Hall. I go there every once in a while and just make a weld. Last week I made some 12-inch welds on a 45, and Justin has helped me a bunch there at the hall. So what Justin told me to help me puddle capping a 375 wall 12-inch on a 45 was to practice making my last filler pass, like flat, or, you know, I don't really want to use the word concave, but like either U-shape or flat versus humped up in the middle, because mine was kind of humped up because I was doing that level with the world thing that I talked about in another video. We'll put that video in the description of this video, because that works. But he gave me this advice and it really helped. So I'm doing the same thing here. I'm trying to make this filler pass, you know, that's why I'm using 1/8 is so it'll butter out more, and I'm just practicing trying to make it flat versus humped up, because with it being humped up in the middle, it affects your cap. To make a long story short, what we did on that 12-inch was, he recommended, especially on like a test, was putting 2 passes in instead of so what I did was I put a bead, which is what we got here, and then I put a hot pass, and then I put a filler on that first one. Well, on that second weld, after I got his advice, I put a bead, a hot pass, and I put 2 passes right next to each other. So I put a pass on this side of the bevel, and then I put a pass on that side of the bevel, and that just that allowed my beads to be flatter. This is all assuming that your bevels are wide enough for 2 passes. It's also a good idea to practice putting 1 fill pass as your last pass before your cap, which is exactly what you're fixing to see me do here, because this bevel on the 6-inch is not wide enough for 2 passes. But the whole goal and the whole advice behind the strip pass, the 2 passes, is to try to make that filler pass flat or a little bit concaved, while also leaving an edge. Because anytime you're fighting gravity on pipe welding, leaving that edge is what's going to help you. It'll hold that weld up. And by making it flatter, you don't have that filler pass humped up and interrupting your cap. Hope that all makes sense. But maybe we can take a look, see here, and see what this looks like after I weld it. Yeah, so hope you can kind of see that. That helped me a bunch whenever he told me that, and it made my cap go a lot easier. Because with this pass being humped up a little bit, it interrupts your cap whenever you're trying to, you know, cap against gravity, if you will. But whenever it's more flat, you don't get as much of an interruption. All right, I was just gonna time lapse all these welds, but little interruption. I wanted to share this with those of you. What just happened here was pressure buildup in this pipe. So I actually learned this on pipeline whenever I was pipelining. Whenever you're on like a final tie-in, a lot of times there'll be pressure in that pipe, and whenever we're trying to put in a bead, a lot of times we'll leave the top open. In other words, weld everything else except the top. Put in a bead, leave a gap at the top, an inch or two gap at the top. Put in your bead all the way to the bottom, put in your bead all the way to the bottom. Leave that gap at the top because that's going to be easier to seal up. Because the top's easier to seal than the bottom whenever there's pressure in there. So in other words, there's air pressure built up in this pipe and it blows out. That little hole you just seen, this little hole right here happened whenever I was capping it. It usually doesn't happen whenever you're capping it, I guess, unless you're welding on some real thin pipe. But on this job, I did not put a proper bead. I just, the fits weren't exact. On something like this, I don't take the time to get like the gap perfect and everything. Usually I don't. In other words, what I'm trying to say is I didn't have a proper bead in this. I didn't grind my tacks. I was just sealing it off, so it was very likely that there was like a gap or some kind of flaw in my bead, and that's why I burnt through on this particular cap. So long story short, it's unusual to blow through on the cap, but I say blow through, it actually blew out, but that's why that looks like that whenever I was capping it. So I'm fixing to take a grinder and grind all that back out, seal it up, and then kind of pretty much seal it off good, put a mini hot pass / filler, and then start capping it. But I just thought that was interesting and a opportunity to share with those of you who are not aware, maybe don't know anything about pressure buildup, you know, in pipe. So a little fun fact, something to be aware of whenever if you ever get into pipeline work. This right here is called a button, or at least that's the term I was taught. That's where I started on this horizontal weld, and that's where I ended. But that's also what it looks like whenever you tie in on the bottom of a regular 5G weld. We call that a button. The reason I'm mentioning that is because on fabrication, like whenever you're building something with pipe and jack stands, a good, neat way to do fabrication and show that you have experience is to put all your buttons in the same spot. So this is something that I actually forget about quite a bit because I just don't do fabrication every day, pipe fabrication every day, but I did put my buttons in the same place on all of these legs. Got my button on the back side here, on the back side here, like you just seen, and I got it the same way on the other side. Organized, neat. That's one of the things that I love about pipeline work, pipe fabrication, is just the organization, little things like that that just make things neater and neater. Not just your weld, like trying to make your weld look better, like every weld better, but also just trying to remember all those little details like that. Another thing that I did was I put my seams, the structural pipe has seams, well, even pipeline pipe sometimes has seams, a lot of it does, but I tried to put my seam on the inside and on the bottom on these two pieces of pipe. That way you wouldn't see them from out here. You'd see no seam. See on this square tubing how they put their seam right here, and you can see it even after it's painted. That's on the outside, so you see a seam. It's on those two. They might have done this one the same way. Yeah, seam's on the outside here, but it's on the inside on this column. Not a big deal, but it's just a little detail that's nice to keep in mind. All right, now that we're done welding these, it's time to cut some half by 3 or 3/8. Yeah, half by 3 flat to cap the ends of our 8-inch square tubing here, because this whole frame was twisted. That's the whole reason we put plate on the bottom, is because there's a gap here and there's a gap cattywampus because this is tweaked. So to get everything level and stay level, we put this plate underneath here. So to clean it up, we're going to put a cap here and a cap on all 4 corners so it all looks clean. So I told you I was going to show you my shop on wheels. So we've got chop saw, just like in a shop. We've got our 2 pieces of plate cut. I'm fixing to make me a line here because whenever I cut these bottom plates, I forgot to add my 4 inches to this one over here. If you notice, there's 2 inches sticking out there, and on the other side there's 2 inches sticking out, but whenever I cut this one, I forgot to add my 2 inches. So to make it match, I'm just going to cut me some of this plate right here and lay flat on the end, that way it matches this one, and then we'll put a plate on the end. And then here in a little bit, we'll be using a skill saw to cut this thin piece of plate. Hey, guess what, boys? We're still on remote setting. Let's try local. See if that'll get us some fire. See if that'll get us some fire, boys. If it don't, we got problems. All right, just had a little lunch. Our shop on wheels has moved from this side of the feed bin to over there because it's a little more shady over there. And check this out. Our Pipeliner's cloud umbrella is now mobile. So now I can lift that whole job up and move it around wherever I'm working. And I still got my slam pole with my other umbrella. I'll probably throw another umbrella on the back of my truck if, well, maybe not, but if I needed it, if that shade leaves us before the end of the day. But I've got all these corners sewed up, all the gaps and stuff. Because we didn't originally plan on capping the ends, I didn't make my 3-inch flat long enough, so I had to cut short pieces to go like this here. So I've got all 3 corners welded up. This is the last one. I'm using 70/18 and I'm just running it uphill, and then I'll sand all them down like I did over there. And then we will start welding this top seam. We're gonna stitch weld it down there, but we're gonna seam weld it along the top on both sides of both of these. So we got lots of welding to do. Welling, if you're from Louisiana. Welling or welding. If you're from Oklahoma, it's welding. If you're from somewhere else where you're more proper, it's welding. I say welding. I worked with some guys that called welding welling. I think I've said it before too, but that's because I worked with them guys and they got me saying that stuff. Anyway, moving right along, let's go ahead and weld these last 2, and then we'll throw it on a time lapse to seam weld these long sections. Let's get her dialed in here. Get her zoomed in a little. Maybe not that much. Maybe like that much. Turn the lights down. Oh yeah. Now, let's burn some welding rod. I forgot my gloves. I'll be back with you. Over here on the back of my pick-em-up truck. Over here on my welding core. All right. We got a 332 70/18. And we've got her on 150 range on the SAE 300. And then we've got her on 30 on the fine current. Let's take off. Welding is so much fun. Got a slight gap here, but luckily we've got a 1/2-inch plate we're dealing with, so I'm just keeping my rod shoved in there. That way it's got something to weld to. And as you can see, I'm moving it back and forth just to stay in that meat. Another thing a guy could do is run a little uphill or downhill 60/10 in this gap. Make this part a little easier because this is liable to be pretty ugly right here. lights back on here. Get us a file. Bust this off here. See what it looks like. Okie dokie. Y'all need a closer view. We'll do that 3 more times. 1 here and 2 on the other side. And then we'll do this number all the way right here. I tell you what, ladies and gentlemen, my mic went dead, so that's why I'm having to get close to the camera. Hopefully you can hear me all right. I can adjust it and edit, but it's hard to get her matching. Anyway, yeah, I'm plumb wore out. That right there's a job now. On your knees. That is a job now. Anyway, this side is all done. I'm gonna have to come back tomorrow, get this other side, and build this safety gate for this ladder, because it is about quitting time. But there you have her. Seam weld on top, stitch weld on bottom. One thing I wanted to mention about welding lead is in my welding lead video, I made a video just about welding lead, like how long to make your welding lead as compared to breaker 19 radio check. Can y'all hear that? Does it sound like a microphone? Maybe I just stay underneath this umbrella. Maybe it'll sound like I have a mic on. Long story short is, when doing a lot of heavy duty welding like this, I say heavy duty, like one rod after another, like I barely sometimes don't let my machine idle down and I'll already have struck up another rod, so I'm just burning rod constantly. It would be even worse if I was running like bigger diameter rod. That's one of the good things about running 332, because it's a small diameter. Anyway, long story short, my welding lead, my stinger was getting warm and my welding lead was getting warm, because I do have I believe I have number 2 or 2 watt maybe. I think I have 2 watt on now, which is smaller than what I ran whenever I was pipelining. If I was to go back on the pipeline, I would get another set of leads, at least a number 1, but really I want a 1 aught. 1 aught is heavier than number 1 if I remember correctly, because on the pipeline, especially on bigger diameter pipe, we're running 3/16 diameter welding rod, and we're burning 1 rod after another, so that's all the more reason whenever you have 100 foot of lead to have bigger welding lead, bigger diameter welding lead. With the kind of stuff I do here at the house, around the house, and farm work and stuff, I don't do a whole lot of what I'm doing now, so that's why I took the cheaper route and got a welding lead that was a little bit smaller. But if I keep doing stuff like this, it's just gonna make my welding lead burn up faster, I would assume anyway, because even with 1 aught or number 1 lead welding on the pipeline all those years, I mean, I had a set of welding leads, I still got them at the shop, but that set of welding leads lasted I mean, several years. But the reason I changed them out and got new lead is because I kept cutting it back. So for one, it was shorter, and every time I cut it back, it was still black. The copper, there's several copper strands in welding lead. All those strands of copper were like black. So from my little 15, 16 years of welding experience, that's the little that I've observed about welding lead. They still work, it's just not, I believe you'll have better welding overall, better connectivity, because after all, we are messing with electricity, you know what I mean? So connectivity is key, you know, a good ground, good welding lead, everything's hooked up tight, make sure all your lugs are tight, your stingers, you know, bolted on tight, and the ground. And so anyway, I just wanted to mention that about welding lead, using this as an example, you know, one rod after another. And this is 142 inches, so what is that? 144 is 12 foot, so just under 12 foot times 2, 24 linear foot of welding. That took me a couple hours, I don't know how long, yeah, 2 or 3 hours to weld that with 332 welding rod. Got my stinger, you know, warm. It was warm. It'll get so warm, I'm rambling, I hope you're not bored yet, but it will get so warm that you won't be able to hold your stinger. In fact, I just talked to a buddy of mine that's pipelining, and he's welding on sleeves, so he's running a lot of, well, they're actually running 70 plus pipeliner, not, they're running 70-18 and pipeliner rod on sleeve work, maintenance work on pipeline. Long story short, he said his stinger was getting really hot because they were running, I forget what size of, maybe he was running 70-18, like a 532 or 3/16 70-18, like some big old rod. And his stinger was sure enough getting hot. And that reminded me that whenever I was welding on the pipeline on big inch pipe, and you know, just bearing down all day, 3/16 rod after another, one 3/16 rod after another, that my stinger would get hot also. And those would be the times where, you know, after that weld, I would trim my lead back to try to get, you know, some better welding lead up there close to my stinger. But running a whip doesn't help. If you go check out that welding lead video, you'll find out what I'm talking about. The whip is just a little bit lighter, 15 or 20 foot lead on the end of your big lead. That way it's lighter, but that just actually makes it worse. You know, as far as the electricity science of it, you know, it makes your stinger hotter, especially the smaller lead you have. But combination between comfort and, you know, quality, so, and not tearing up your welding lead. You know, welding lead's expensive, so overall what I'm learning is don't cheap out on your welding lead. You can't go wrong having too heavy a welding lead, and plus it'll make you tough when you go to roll it up. Come on. All right, speaking of roll up, let's roll this welding car up. It is sure enough toasty, boys. Thank God for shade trees. Call me the shade tree welder. I like a good couple of shade trees. Thanks for stopping by today. We appreciate you being here. For more helpful resources, check out our website, arosswelding.com. Also, don't forget to use the discount codes Austin Ross, all caps, or AROS, all caps, to save you some money if you want to try out the new Kevlar stitching Knox FR shirts. And to watch part 2 of this project, click on one of these videos on the screen. And remember, learn something every day.